Welcome to Cinema Chop Shop. Watch, chop, retrofit.
We had a wonderful time on Sunday in Charleston this past weekend. We went to an event that I was super hyped about that you brought to my attention. Lewis Barbecue, which is a pretty successful barbecue place down there, also has a high-end Mexican restaurant. And John Lewis, the proprietor, spent time in El Paso and in New Mexico.
Rancho Lewis.
Rancho Lewis is the name of the high-end Mexican restaurant. And so while he was in the Southwest, he fell in love with Hatch green chilies.
As he should. Which
are the state pepper of New Mexico. In New Mexico, if you order Mexican food, they ask you red or green. What kind of chili do you want? If you order a chili cheeseburger, it's going to have Hatch green chilies, not like hot dog chili. And it was just fantastic. The aromas,
oh my God,
wafting through that courtyard, it was absolutely great. But this is not a skip the line podcast.
Yes, which you did very well.
I just kept doing it. I was like, it worked last time. That was the only downside of the event, is that it was very, very packed and
in a condensed space.
In a condensed space, and the lines were long. Yeah. But I was like, fuck that noise.
It was great. It was worth it. But yes, it's not a Hatch Chili podcast. This is Cinema Chop Shop.
Woo!
We're a movie podcast that talks about movies and shit. And this is week number 2 of our October theme, knockoff movies.
Knockoffs.
We had a great time last week talking about...
Last week we talked about Jaws and all of the many, many films that were, let's say, inspired by Jaws.
But this week we're going to be talking about the 1984 classic Gremlins.
Not the godfather of creature features, but probably the most successful one from the 1980s. Obviously, there's influences from the 50s and stuff.
Oh, sure.
But we got 86% on Rotten Tomatoes. Pretty solid. And I think that it goes without saying that this movie has influenced a ton of not only knockoffs, but also just very similar movies structurally.
By the way, I'm joined with me is the podfather himself, Travisito. In case you didn't know, no intros needed.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Gremlins, directed by the great Joe Dante.
Who has also done a ton of other stuff. Last week, Joey was talking about Piranha. Also, he did The Howling, Explorers, Inner Space, The Burbs. The list goes on and on. But he apprenticed under Roger Corman at Roger Corman's New World Studios. Yes. And that will kind of come into play in our discussion tonight as well.
Joe Dante seems like a super cool guy. Every interview I've ever seen with him, he seems like the kind of guy you would want to hang out with. He did a fantastic job with this film because it has its feet in so many territories all at once. You have the creature feature chock full of violence and gore, but at the same time you've got the charming quality of both the Mogwai and the Gremlins, and the comedy of it, which reminds me of his segment from The Twilight Zone, the movie, with the kid who had the cartoon house.
Yes.
Very much the same kind of vein where it was violent yet laughable. And then you've got, I don't know if you'd call it young romance, but the budding romance, I guess, between the two principal characters, which we should talk about the cast.
Yeah, so we've got Zach Galligan is our lead, and I don't know how old he was at the time, but he's supposed to be a teenager.
Yeah, right, maybe, like all 80s
maybe
teenagers.
Maybe just graduated high school. Then we've got Phoebe Cates. And
the timeless Phoebe Cates.
Who, and this is post Fast Times, right?
Yes.
And so she really took a step backwards in terms of the booby count. Because in Gremlins, there's none.
None.
And in Fast Times, of course, there's...
I wouldn't even go so far as to
glorious.
say that the costumer even pushed it even harder, because there's the scene where she's working in the bank, and she's dressed like your grandmother.
Yeah, she's wearing like a crocheted sweater.
High neck, big poofy shoulders, the complete opposite of the red bikini.
Then we've got Hoyt Axton, who is... plays the father figure who's a struggling inventor.
My one knock against this movie has to do with Hoyt, and it's not him personally. I think his performance is fine. The utilization of him as a narrator at the beginning and the end of the film indicating that the narrator has some sort of insight into the goings-on where he wasn't present.
He wasn't even around.
He wasn't around. He had nothing to do with the movie. He's a bookend.
Unreliable narrator at that.
Yeah.
Narrator in absentia. Then we've got a very young Corey Feldman. This is pre-Goonies. I had this on. I rewatched it this week, and my wife was like, "Is that Corey Feldman?"
Sure enough.
It sure is. And then the voice of Gizmo is none other than Howie Mandel.
Yeah. Kind of doing his Bobby's World voice.
The main Mogwai character.
Yeah.
So, quick plot summary. A gadget salesman is looking for a special gift for his son and finds one in a store in Chinatown. The shopkeeper is reluctant to tell him that to sell him the Mogwai, but sells it to him with the warning to never expose him to bright light, water, or feed him after midnight. All of this happens, and the result is a gang of gremlins that decide to tear up the town on Christmas Eve. Now, it says he was reluctant, but eventually sells the Mogwai.
Well, the kid sells it behind his back.
Yeah. He's hustling.
Yeah, he says Grandpa's, in his old age, doesn't know what it takes to keep the doors open and the lights on, so I'm going to sell you this really strange creature.
Right. And it definitely does play into the American fascination with Asian culture, especially at the time. It was fairly new to people to go to Chinatown and go to one of these oddities shops. What do you think?
I agree, and it's borderline offensive.
Borderline stereotypical.
The way the old man was played out.
Uh-huh.
I think that somebody should do a mashup with this movie and Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same thing. Or they could do like a crossover comic book.
Yeah.
That would
be cool.
Brilliant. Yeah, he definitely does have kind of a stereotypical Fu Manchu.
Yeah. He even has is it both eyes or one eye?
I think he's got one dead eye.
It's a dead eye. It's like crystal blue. Let's talk about the big focal point of the film. The Mogwai is an amazing work of practical effects.
Oh yeah,
it's cute. I know some people will disagree, but for the most part, it's cute. It's articulate. It works on camera.
It's basically furry Grogu before Grogu.
Right. Yeah. And being a kid of that era, I guess I was 11 years old at the time. The merchandise surrounding the Mogwai was pretty prolific. Not so much with the Gremlins because they were pretty gory and gross, but the Mogwai, God, man,
they were everywhere.
Everywhere, stuffed animals and little figures and shit.
Influenced the craze that was Furbies later.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a very much the eye movement, the mouth movement, very similar. Speaking of the Gremlins, though, they look more like marionette puppets in a lot of the scenes, but very well done, I think.
So the evil ones, turn and reproduce into very alien-looking, almost...
After they're fed after midnight.
Yes.
That's always one of those things that people puzzle over. It's like, okay, so you don't feed them after midnight, but when can I feed them?
Because technically it's always after midnight.
Always after midnight.
And the only reason that he does make the mistake of feeding them after midnight is because they unplug his clock, or they set the clock back to trick him.
Devious.
Yes.
Devious. And of course you've got the leader Stripe.
Yeah.
With his white
Stripe's
mohawk.
a badass. He's very punk rock.
Yeah. The guys at Red Letter Media own one of the Gremlins figures.
Oh, wow.
One of the props from the film, and made entirely of foam latex. Mm-hmm. Practically falling apart as those do over time. Made on the cheap, versatile, perfect for what they used it for. In terms of the plot, as you said, shenanigans abound.
Yes.
Once the Gremlins gain agency, they kind of take over the town. It's
like the inmates are running the asylum. The kids have no teacher.
The cows are out of the barn.
Yes.
They're out of control. Mm-hmm. They're like your one friend who should not drink, and once they hit that tipping point,
right,
all bets are off.
Yeah,
that's like every single one of those guys, and then they multiply.
Yes, suddenly we have a real problem on our hands.
Yeah, we got a big problem. The movie kind of lags a little bit. I know it comes in at 1 hour and 40 minutes, and there's about 10 minutes worth of filler, in my opinion, where they're pushing for the comedy. You've got the Gremlins hanging out at the bar. And for some reason, Phoebe Cates is trying to serve them drinks, and she's stressing over getting all the drinks poured at a certain period of time. I guess she's just fearing for her life, naturally. But then there are all these shots of them like playing cards, shooting each other like gangsters. I think Stripe has a bowler hat on at one point, and there's like another gremlin who's trying to entertain him with puppets. Where'd he get the puppets?
And speaking of her being a bartender, there's a scene pretty early on where an actor that we know, and I'm drawing a blank, it's like Dick something.
Dick Miller.
Dick Miller is the old drunk at the bar, and they cut him off. He decides to walk home, and he says it's because Gremlins had gotten to his snowplow.
He's the one who keeps making references to Gremlins in terms of the 1940s World War II Gremlins that got in the planes.
Would sabotage aircraft.
Right. You mentioned other cast members. We should also mention that Judge Reinhold, who was in Fast Times at Ridgemont High
with Phoebe
jerking
Cates.
off to Phoebe Cates, is her manager at the bank.
I didn't even realize that. That's awesome.
Yes, so I don't know if that's some sort of alternate reality where she gets her comeuppance for taunting him with her boobas.
Her boobas.
So that's Gremlins. This movie was one of the films that was lumped into the pre-PG-13 era where the parents and groups and whatnot said, we got to do something about this. Gremlins, on the surface, looks like a kid-friendly movie.
Right,
and boy, does it take a turn.
A lot of violence. Cartoon violence, but still very, pretty graphic violence.
Yeah, I agree. Along the lines of like a Child's Play, almost, where you've got childlike toys doing crime.
So we should also mention that it did spawn a sequel. Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
I never saw it.
It's an inferior film, as a lot of sequels are. Doesn't really hold up the way this does. But Joe Dante says he's in pre-production on Gremlins 3. So I'm just putting that out there. For good or bad, he says he's doing it.
I'm curious about that. Well, being as it is knockoff month.
Yes.
Let's talk about some knockoffs.
And we're going to go in release date order, right?
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. And, Gremlins is one of those funny ones where we'll get into it. You'll see that the knockoffs are not true knockoffs 2/3 of the time.
Yeah.
And there's one that we left out that we're going to save for another episode on its own as a watch party. Garbage Pail Kids gets lumped into. Oh my God! Garbage Pail Kids gets lumped into the Gremlins knockoffs.
I can completely see that. Yeah.
I have not seen this film.
I have.
I'm saving it for the watch
Fairly
party.
Recently.
But we chose not to include that here. So so when you don't hear that mentioned in the knockoffs, you can hold off on sending us your emails.
Right.
Because we get enough as it is. Emails are fast and the furious.
And so the first one is. I've got 84 as well, but you've got 1985, which makes sense for it to have been influenced by a 1984 movie, and it's Ghoulies. The cover art, speaking of VHS cover art, has a little monster coming out of the toilet.
The green monster.
Yeah, and as a kid who loved video stores, this cover art was scary to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm in kindergarten, and you're positing to me that this little monster thing can come out of the toilet?
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
And I'll even go so much to say that I was lied to by my classmates growing up that claimed that this movie was about little men who would crawl up through the sewers and eat your ass while you're taking a dump. And that's not the case.
No.
This movie is really far from what you would be led to believe by the movie poster. It's not all about the little miniature critters.
Right.
It's a satanic panic kind of film, centered around the dark arts.
So it does have a whopping 7% on Rotten Tomatoes, the lowest rated of the movies that we're going to be talking about today. It was directed by, who I have to assume is an Italian director, Luca Bercovici.
Bercovici, that's what I was going to say.
Luca Bercovici, who I don't know anything about.
No, but it stars Peter Liapis.
Yeah.
Liapis, Lisa Pelican, which I thought was funny. Jack Eraserhead Nance.
Yes.
Which I thought was exciting. Mariska Hargitay.
in her feature film debut.
And I think that she really steals a lot of scenes.
Yeah, she was actually pretty good. You could see that she was going to have a career.
And then you got the big granddaddy king Satanist who like starts out in the film and then comes back from the dead. His name is Michael DeBar.
Mm-hmm. Malcolm is the character, right?
Yes, he is a real life Marquis.
Oh, really?
Is, I guess he's still alive. Yeah.
So speaking, just backtracking a little bit to Mariska, we already know that she is Hollywood royalty, being the daughter of Jane Mansfield. But do you know what the only other credit she has prior to Ghoulies?
Was it like a commercial?
It's not a commercial. It's a music video for a song by Ronnie Millsap, She Loves My Car.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. You want me to go through break down the plot a little bit?
Yeah, hit it.
As a child, Jonathan, played by Peter Liapis, was almost killed by his father, Malcolm, played by Michael DeBar, during a satanic ritual. After being saved and raised by Wolfgang, who's played by Jack Nance, who has kept him unaware of his background, Jonathan inherits Malcolm's house and moves in with girlfriend Rebecca, played by Lisa Pelican. During a party, he jokingly performs a ceremony described in one of his father's books on black magic, not realizing he has unleashed small, demonic creatures known as ghoulies.
Yes.
So this was my least favorite of all the movies that we watched in this vein this week. What did you think?
I agree. There are problems throughout this film. I mean, besides capitalizing on the satanic panic craze, it didn't age well. But it does suffer from the typical 1980s. We've got 30-year-olds playing young 20-somethings.
And they say that that our main character, Jonathan, is just joking around with this satanic ritual, but he gets hooked.
Yeah, he gave it the good college try. And I say college try because he's wearing a Letterman sweater, a cardigan sweater. That was great choice. Yeah, he gave it a good shot. And it's kind of like when people's last names dictate what their careers are going to be. Like Joe Strummer, you're going to be a guitar player.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this guy,
Horatio Hornblower.
Yeah, this guy was pretty much destined to be a Satanist because his whole house is filled with gargoyles.
Yeah.
How did he not notice that?
He didn't get out very much. He thought everybody's house was like that.
But yeah, you've got a lot of stereotypical horny teens hanging out at the house. You've got the guy who's bound and determined to get laid. He's got the condom that he pulls out of the wallet and waves around like
the classic.
He's serious about getting laid. And then you've got the gay couple. Did you pick up on the gay couple?
Oh, it was very, very subtle.
Yeah, the stoners. They were intent on getting drunk and stoned together, but they were always together.
Yeah.
Always shoulder to shoulder and always like having quiet moments alone.
Right.
I was like, oh, that's cute. That's really sweet. Let's see. What are we going to talk about?
Let's talk. Practical effects are subpar compared to Gremlins.
Yes. Let's talk about the ghoulies themselves.
Yes.
You've got Mole Rat Guy.
Hans Mole Man.
Which has no anatomy whatsoever in that whoever's working the puppeteering doesn't understand the concept of a nose structure and a jaw structure. Instead, their hands are just kind of wiggling around. The green ghoulie that had the movie poster, very poorly painted, very poorly done. What else did they have? There were 4 of them, right? Yeah, they were not well done. Oh, the cat monkey. That's what I call him. Cat monkey. Yes, just awful puppeteering. Just very little respect for making these look realistic. And yeah, you could say, oh, they're demonic creatures, so they don't adhere to our physics. But at the same time, you're watching a film and you've got to believe what you're seeing, and that just wasn't happening. The lead kind of gets full on into the Satanist thing.
He was very smarmy. He rubbed me the wrong way immediately, and I was looking him up to see if maybe I knew him from something I didn't like later, and I really don't know much that he's done, but I did not care for him. his smugness.
Yeah, I didn't like him either. And that's a problem when you're a lead actor.
Right.
Just
He's
like
so
set you
unlikable.
up. Yeah, you just don't like him at all. But yeah, he gets really into the whole mystic arts thing, so much so that he drives his girlfriend away. She doesn't want anything to do with him.
He makes up with her. She comes to bed. They start making out, and he starts chanting his satanic ritual stuff. And she's like, "What are you doing?"
You mean you don't do that?
Not everybody did that.
Oh man, but yeah,
that's how we bone in this house.
Oh, let's talk about the little people.
Oh yeah, that was a little off-putting. I'm sorry, that was quite off-putting.
Yeah, it was not good. But at the same time, as characters, they were kind of trying to protect him a little bit, even though they were also beholden to the father.
The juxtaposition of the little people and the ghoulies was, let's say, an interesting choice in terms of the writing here.
He orchestrates this meal where he has all of his friends over, and they're all required to wear sunglasses.
Super
at night.
cool.
Yeah, well, this is Corey Hart. We all wear our sunglasses at night. And then, sitting at the table, he tells them that I and my wife, girl, whatever her name was, we've already eaten, but you guys go ahead and eat.
That's always a red flag.
Would that not set you off as just even like your best friend or even a casual friend? If they did that, you'd be like, "No, dude, that's okay. I'm just gonna chill."
Right.
But no,
I already ate too.
So yeah, these gullible guys, they decided to go ahead and have their meal. But the ex at this point is under his command. She is just a vessel. And so he's orchestrated this dinner party so they can all die at the hands of the ghoulies. And then the father comes back.
Yes.
As I put in my notes, his tombstone popped like a turkey.
His tombstone popped like, is that just boom?
Yeah, the little turkey timer thing.
Yes.
That tombstone just kind of popped right up out of the ground.
Yeah.
And Dad was back, and he had some choice words for his son.
Well, speaking of cemeteries, do you want to do a beer check-in?
Sure.
I've got one that fits that theme.
Nice.
It is called Graveyard Shift. Graveyard Shift, I believe from Westbrook.
Nice.
And it's a double dry hopped India Pale Ale. And check out that cover art.
Oh yeah. I've had this one before. This is fantastic. It's got the Freddy Krueger hand, the Jason Voorhees, the Michael Myers, and then the chainsaw from
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yep. Good pickup, man.
Leatherface.
While I'm opening this, I was drinking a Munkel Saison. We stopped off at Munkel, and
stopped off is one way to put it.
We crossed the tracks.
Right.
We walked from across the highway.
Yeah.
And
Michelle was none too pleased.
Michelle was not happy.
She's like, we should have just driven. I was like, no, this is how everybody gets in here.
I carried her across the tracks because Travis would not give her any assistance whatsoever.
Like the Toxic Avenger.
Speaking of Toxic Avenger, that movie's coming up pretty soon.
Starring
Peter Dinklage.
Speaking of little people,
yeah.
Peter Dinklage. I can see it.
Oh, I think it's going to be fun.
I can dig that.
It's dank.
So the two hops, the double dry hopped, are Citra and Citra Incognito, which is that like a cross strain?
Probably. They're all at this point. It's got a great aroma. It's a light body. It kind of dissipates on the tongue very quickly.
Yeah. It's not overwhelmingly carbonated like my last beer check-in.
Let's see. What else are we going to say about this?
The reception, the critical reception, people were a little bit mixed. So I've just got a couple of examples here. Vincent Canby of the New York Times dismissed the film as a, quote, cut-rate Gremlins with unexceptional performances and a lot of badly simulated gore. Variety wrote that the film has a quaint corniness about it, as if it were a cheapy horror movie from the 1950s. Special effects and production values are mediocre, which in this case is part of the fun.
Oh, okay. That's being really polite.
And generous, I think.
I said that the dad looked like a blonde Emperor Palpatine.
Yeah.
And there were, from scene to scene to scene, his makeup changed. Like, he was supposed to have, like, dead makeup.
Yeah.
and it would like be kind of dead,
Well, they couldn't afford a continuity
and
person.
then not really dead, and then really dead. It was just all over the place. Speaking of continuity person, there is a scene where someone's supposed to hold like a chalice with blood in it or something, and the shots are out of sequence. Like there's one shot they're already holding the chalice of blood, and then the next shot they're presenting the cup and he's pouring it in. So yeah, this movie's got real problems besides just the general shittiness of the plot. I agree. I'm with you. I didn't care for it on the Gremlins ripoff scale. I would rank it pretty low.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, yes, it shares the quality of having little creatures who are up to no good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're not the star of the film. It's more about this whole mystical, satanic style ritual.
Yes.
And this guy's grand design of being this master warlock. So we're off to a rip-roaring start on our Gremlins rip-off, knockoff movies, but I promise you we've got the goods that are coming up in the second half. So we're going to go ahead and take a break, but not before we say, let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby and get ourselves some
munchies.
You'll know what we're talking about in a minute.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go.
Welcome back. We just took a brief moment to not pee in the yard. We're going to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
And
we don't want to miss a thing.
No. And we're just restocking on our beers for the second half. Well, we're going to dive right into some additional Gremlins knockoffs.
All right. So the next one is, in my opinion, a superior movie, and I would venture to say that it is not really that much of a knockoff.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to call Critters from 1986.
Critters.
Yeah, it's unfair to call it a Gremlins knockoff.
So it's directed by Stephen Herrick, and we've got a 50% here on Rotten Tomatoes. Stephen Herrick directed some big ones.
Yeah.
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
The Mighty Ducks.
Mr. Holland's Opus.
And one of my favorite films, Don't Tell Mom, The Babysitter's Dead.
Shit, man. This guy's good.
Yeah.
Is this like one of his early features, I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
All right. So what you have is a straight up sci-fi film where you have the Krites, which I thought was a bit of a stretch. They are intergalactic criminals, although they never really go into detail about what they did criminally.
They're very murderous.
But yeah, they obviously are, as we will soon see.
When they eat, they get bigger.
Yeah. So these guys, these Krites, the
They
critters.
should have called them crits.
Yeah, crits. So the crits basically break out of their prison planet, hijack a ship, and split.
But hot on their trail
Are bounty hunters. Now, I want to comment about this. There is one flaw in this film. You're on a prison planet, and you have bounty hunters on standby.
It's basically the same thing as a bail bondsman.
But they're on the planet. They're just hanging out, and they're like, "Yo, hey, bounty hunters, let's go."
Well, bail bondsmen are always, their businesses are always situated right by the jail.
So yeah, they all head for Earth, I guess, because that's what you do. So let's talk about the cast real quick. We've got horror sci-fi royalty, Dee Wallace.
Dee Wallace.
She's adorable.
The mom from E.T.
And the mom from Cujo.
Uh-huh.
She's delightful. She's fantastic. Watch the Into Darkness documentary for her interviews. She seems like such a wonderful person.
She reminds me of Terry Garr a little bit.
Yeah.
Same era, too.
Right on. Yep, she is definitely the mom vibe. Mm-hmm. She nails it. We also have Scott Grimes, who plays the child in the family, who would go on to be the voice of Steve Smith in the animated series American Dad.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you.
That little redheaded kid?
And pay attention, because that's going to come up again later in the show.
Okay, I did want to point out that the mom is blonde. The dad is brunette. The daughter's brunette, but the son is randomly a redhead.
It happens.
Recessive genes, recessive traits, maybe?
I'm sure Chelsea could weigh in on this.
Okay.
We've got Emmett Walsh.
Yes.
Fucking legendary character actor. Blood Simple, Blade Runner, The Jerk.
Yes. That guy really hates these cans.
He hates these cans. So you got him. Ethan Phillips, who played Neelix on Star Trek Voyager. He is one of the deputies out in the field who bites it pretty early on. That, again, plays a part later on. Then we have Nadine Vandervelde.
Nadine Vandervelde, she shows up in this and another movie we're going to talk about shortly.
That's right.
And do you want me to get into the reason she doesn't have anything after the year 2000?
In the year 2000.
Yes. So she, along with her husband, Scott Kraft, who is a producer, started a show for children, a live-action musical show called Fresh Beat Band. And Scott Kraft went on to be the executive producer of a little show called Paw Patrol.
Nicely done.
So she doesn't have to lift a finger another time in her life.
Not only that,
That's
but
how you say that
one
expression.
of her other shows, her other kids shows that she produced, I can't remember the name of it, she won a Daytime Emmy for.
Right.
So she's accomplished.
Yes.
Screw films. She's doing just fine on her own. Also in this movie, you have the conspiracy nut Charlie.
Yes.
Played by Don Keith Opper. Now,
he's always drunk.
Well, I only bring him up because he does have two parts. He's the drunk, but he's also going to become one of the faces of the bounty hunters, which we'll get into in a second. But his character shows up in 4 of the Critter movies.
Oh, really?
So 1, 2, 3, and 4, he is in the movies. So he's a significant player. I believe he also wrote several of the scenes, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So he has a lot to do on the creative side of things beyond just acting.
They play those two archetypes against each other because he's the one who's the harbinger. He's sounding the alarm about these UFOs and these aliens, but at the same time, he's the town drunk. So who's going to believe him?
It's the boy who cried wolf.
Nobody will ever believe you, Rummy.
Alrighty. And also, a very young, very unknown Billy Zane. With
a rat tail?
Yeah, baby! He's a Jedi in training.
And they, Nadine Vandervelde, April's her character's name, takes a literal roll in the hay with him and misses the introduction of the critters because she's out in the barn in the hayloft.
Yes, she is. All right, so we've got these two bounty hunters who are in hot pursuit of the critters.
Mm-hmm.
And they are faceless, formless, and once they land on Earth, they kind of assume the identities of things and people that they've seen.
Yeah.
And one of them is the face of Johnny Steele, a musician who has played on several televisions doing his music video, an original song for
So he is a real
No, he's
person?
not real. He's played by the actor Terrence Mann.
Oh, okay.
Now, I bring him up because Terrence Mann is a North Carolina boy.
Okay.
And he's very active these days in the North Carolina theater based in Raleigh.
Interesting.
So he is he's locally born, locally bred, and he has continued to do the acting and producing and directing thing on a local level. So we want to bring him up and give him props just because we support our own here.
I'm pretty sure there's an NBA player named Terrence Mann as well.
By the way, when they assume the identities of the people, that was a really cool special effect.
Yeah. I was thinking that at first they were just going to phone it in and like say, "Oh, you've got to change," or whatever they
and it was like
term
Zappo.
they use. Well, they immediately cut away to the outside of the ship, and I thought they were just going to have it be the actor when they got out of the ship, but he's still, and he's like, "I told you to transform." He's like, "Not everything fits me," or something like that. So he waits, and then the deputy that's been in the wreck, he assumes his face, which comes into play later because they steal the cop car, and people are like, "Well, what's going on with you?"
Yeah.
And they're wearing their very
futuristic
modern, intergalactic traveler outfits.
There you go. But it was like this reverse, like wax pouring effect. It was really, really cool, and I give them high marks for that.
Right.
It looked super sharp for a low budget sci-fi film. They're in hot pursuit. The critters make their landfall well before, and kind of set up shop at the family farm.
Yes.
And they start chomping hard. Dad takes it in the shoulder.
Yes.
The left shoulder, significant, and then I think they pop him in the side or something too, and so the whole family's kind of like trying to kick him out.
Well, the critters have these like porcupine-esque
darts.
Yeah,
they can shoot the darts.
They shoot these darts.
Yeah, Dee Wallace takes one in the shoulder.
Incapacitates you. The dad, the character of the dad, he was frustrating at times. Like, he finally goes and gets the shotgun and only loads 2 rounds. I just had issues with his character. Like, for example, after he's injured, he's like, we got to get outside. We got to go to the car. And he puts his wife and his 2 children in front of him exiting the house as like a human shield.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you can still walk, you better be in front, man.
There are there's some problematic things like that.
And he's the one holding the gun.
Yeah.
Why is he in the back?
Yeah, it didn't age well on you there, boss. Some other things, they get a hold of the sheriff to come help. In the middle of the night, the sheriff wakes up, and at his bedside table, pinned to the wall, is a picture of Dolly Parton from 9 to 5. This is an adult man with a tiny picture from like a newspaper or the TV Guide pinned to his wall.
Well, he loves Dolly Parton.
But anyway, that struck me as being a little off.
Wait, is that the sheriff or the deputy?
No, it's the sheriff. Okay. That is
Emmett Walsh.
Yeah. Which, given his filmography, that kind of does track. It's kind of funny.
The shooting up the church would probably not fly today.
No, that didn't age well. Ultimately, the little kid actor kind of does some heroic shit. Kind of puts his life on the line to help save the day, as sci-fi movies tend to do on Earth. The kids are always the stars, always the heroes, a lot of times at least.
Well, especially in this era, there's a lot of stuff like his bedroom door says like "Kid Zone, keep out" or something like that. I think it's funny that even though the older sister, or Nadine Van de Velde, even though she lives on a farm, she's dressed like she's in a Cyndi Lauper video.
Well, yeah, that's the way it was, man. I mean, everybody was going for that aesthetic back then.
Where are you two going so quick after dinner? We're just going out to the hayloft.
So yeah, the Gremlin knockoff aspect of this.
I've got a point to that.
Hit me with it.
Although widely believed to have been inspired by the success of Joe Dante's 1984 film Gremlins, Herrick has refuted this in interviews, pointing out that the script was written by Muir long before the script for Gremlins.
Yeah. I mean, again, as you said, they start out small, they grow bigger, and they kind of are sort of chuckleheads a little bit. We don't understand their language. We don't know what they're saying. That's really... they have teeth. I mean, they have sharp teeth like the Gremlins, but that's really kind of where the similarities end. Other than being, in practical terms, they're puppets.
Well, they look kind of like Popples. Do you remember Popples?
Yeah, I do remember Popples. Now, I will say that to the film's discredit, and much like Ghoulies, all of the shots of them are from like behind things, and where the puppeteer can be hidden behind, a la Muppets and Sesame Street.
There's a couple of weird things that I noticed. One, in the very beginning, they do a product placement of a name brand orange juice in the kitchen. It's like Tropicana or something like that. Yeah. And then later, I was like, why is this guy wearing a Ghostbusters shirt in this movie? And then they finally do a close-up, and instead of the ghost busting through the no sign, it's a bowling pin, like an anthropomorphized bowling pin. Yeah. So you can only assume that their bowling team are the Pin Busters.
So crazy. Some other notes about the film. Why would the Krites even leave? They end up leaving. Why would they? They could just go somewhere else. At the end of the film, Brad thanks the bounty hunters. Ultimately, what did the bounty hunters do?
They came and destroyed the farmhouse.
They didn't really do much of anything.
With their highly technologically advanced weaponry.
But they did reconstruct the farmhouse, which again was a great practical effect.
They the kid's kind of a firebug / explosives nut, and he's very impressed with their space age weapons.
So compared to Ghoulies, I think this one ranks even lower on the knockoff scale.
Oh, okay. So you're saying lower on the scale, meaning it's less of
a knockoff,
less influenced by.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, and I think it's a better movie than Ghoulies.
I think it's probably it's.
I think I could watch this movie stand alone, having no prior knowledge of Gremlins, and enjoy the movie.
Exactly, I agree with you. Yeah, I think it has plenty of the things that you like in a sci-fi film. You have a threat from outer space. You've got family, and the family rallies around each other to kind of survive this strange ordeal.
Yeah.
There are some oddities here and there, but ultimately that's the core of the film. I liked it. I liked it a bunch. Let's jump into the next one, shall we? Or do you want to pop a beer or anything?
Sure. Yeah, let's can we try that?
Oh yeah,
Saison?
yeah. The Saison's right here whenever you want it.
What is that one?
I have the Munkel Haustbier. This is their Oktoberfest. Which I think you had a sip of this.
Yeah, and like a rookie, I walked into Munkel asking for an IPA, and they're like, "No, get the fuck out."
Yeah, Munkel is a
9.
They're very much inspired by the Trappist monk style of beers. A lot of quads, a lot of tripels, and saisons. Mm-hmm. But their fest beer is beautiful. This is exactly what you want out of an Oktoberfest. Crystal clear, beautiful amber color, great.
And that is the same style as a Marzen, correct? Marzen and Oktoberfest
they all kind
beers?
of fall together. Oh, the caramel on this thing is amazing. All right, enough gushing about Munkel.
Who's your Munkel?
I don't know, but this is the one. This is the one. This is why you need to listen to this episode. Mm-hmm. We're talking about 1987's Munchies. This movie was not on my radar my entire life until a week and a half ago.
I was aware of it.
You were? Okay.
Yeah, in that same way that I was aware of the cover for Ghoulies.
Okay.
I used to literally go through, before Blockbuster, small town video stores, and just examine video covers.
Never saw this one in my life. You've got a gremlin-looking thing. He looks just like Stripe on the movie poster. Yeah. Looking up, presumably a skirt. This girl's
implying
long legs.
That there's going to be some sort of
sexy shenanigans,
romp aspect to it, and there's really not very much.
This movie, I call this one, if I had to subtitle this one, Corman versus Corman versus Corman.
Nice. Yeah.
Because we have Harvey Korman with a K playing two roles. Mm-hmm. Produced by Roger Corman. And it's directed by Tina Hirsch. Travis, tell us about Tina Hirsch.
So Tina Hirsch started out as an editor for Roger Corman's, we mentioned it earlier, New World Studio. And she was an editor on Gremlins.
Yeah, she picked up her wings.
Uh-huh. And also she was the editor on the aforementioned It's a Good Life, the Joe Dante directed segment of The Twilight Zone. Now, it is ironic to me that Joe Dante didn't direct the Gremlins episode of the Twilight Zone movie, which is just as enjoyable. But yeah, she learned from Roger Corman and worked with Joe Dante. A lot of people in that time period, your Francis Ford Coppola's, your Steven Spielberg's, your George Lucas's, all got their start with Roger Corman because he would take anybody on and he could make anything on a shoestring budget.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll be talking more about Roger Corman in next week's episode, and you'll be amazed at some of the people attached to those films.
So we mentioned it stars Harvey Korman.
Yes.
Also, Charlie Stratton. Nadine Vandeveld shows up again.
She's back, baby.
She's back. And also Robert Picardo.
Who was the doctor on Star Trek Voyager, which also starred the guy who played Neelix in our previous film.
Wendy Shaw, obviously Kristen Shaw's mom.
She plays the role of Francine in American Dad. Also with Scott Grimes, who's the voice of Steve in our previous fucking film.
Wendy Shaw is Francine on
Yes!
American Dad.
These connections
That
are
is
insane.
wild.
Yes.
And then we would be remiss if we did not mention the stereotypical stoner character played by John Stafford, who's simply named Dude. But we glossed over Harvey Korman plays an archaeologist.
An astroarchaeologist.
And he plays his own twin brother, who's a scheming, low-life business guy.
Pitchman.
Yes. So let's go into the plot. An archaeologist finds a strange creature in Peru and takes it home. He dubs the creature a munchie, but is unprepared for the ensuing chaos when the beast starts to mutate. Things get even more complicated when a con man steals the munchie. Things get even more complicated when a con man tries to steal the munchie. I liked this better than Ghoulies, but not as much as Critters.
Agreed. So the film starts out in Peru. The astroarchaeologist Harvey Korman is on the trail for something fantastic, and his son Paul, who wants to be a comic, is on this trip for some reason.
And he makes a deal with his dad that if he goes along with this thing and helps him, then he'll be allowed to go to Los Angeles and pursue his comedy career. He's not funny, though.
Right out of the gate, Harvey Korman tells him, "You're not funny." And guess what, folks?
He's not funny.
Harvey Korman's right.
At one point, he's in bed with his girlfriend, and he's got an inflatable hammer, and he just like taps her on the knee.
It's just
is
terrible.
he a Carrot Top?
I don't know what he is.
On?
So right out of the gate, now this much like Gremlins, where you get Gizmo from the word go. This film, they introduce the munchie.
Yes.
Right there. They get him. They stuff him in a bag and go home. They get him through customs somehow.
If the cover of the VHS would provide any sort of clues, then we have to assume that he's munching on that poontang.
The music is very, very much like Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It had to have been influenced by that score. Absolutely, Danny Elfman should be getting royalty checks from this piss-poor film, except there is no royalties. The cast seems not the least bit phased that this creature they've just encountered can mimic them and speak.
Yeah.
He can speak English, folks.
Perfect English.
What the fuck? And nobody seems fazed by this. To make it easier on the director, I guess, Harvey Korman splits the archaeologist version of him. Just kind of like, I'm out.
Much like the father in Gremlins.
Yeah, he kind of
gone for
bails.
the main portion of the action.
But yeah, I agree that the bet is the shakiest premise in this film. It's pretty shitty. Let's see. Teen horniness furthers the plot.
Yeah.
Because they want to hook up. But he's supposed to be watching the Gremlin. Or the Munchie. Sorry. The Munchie.
The Munchie.
By the way, this is the most knockoff of the knockoff.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to be watching him. And instead of watching him, they go off to go fuck.
Presumably with more props.
Oh, wasn't the Munchie's name was Arnold, by the way.
Okay. I didn't remember that.
What a strange choice for a name. I don't know if there's an Arnold Schwarzenegger reference, but why? I don't know. What other Arnold from Different Strokes? Because he's little?
Maybe both. I mean, maybe Arnold was just a very popular name at that time period.
I think somebody got stabbed with a fondue fork.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
That was Stoner Dude, wasn't he? Didn't he get stabbed with a fondue fork at some point?
Dude.
That kitchen looked like the set from The Facts of Life when they opened the cool, hip 80s store.
Yeah.
It was very, very 80s. The Munchie multiplies just like the Gremlins.
Mm-hmm.
It's a direct ripoff. There is nothing creative about that. And unlike Gremlins, though, these guys are horny.
Yeah.
The Munchies are horny.
Yep.
They want to rub one out.
They want to take this movie down to Pound Town.
Oh, there's one scene in this film that just like made me cringe, and it had nothing to do with anything intentional. The lead character is walking around in a pair of Air Jordans Edition 1s in the mud.
Oh my God! Could you imagine?
I jumped out of my seat. I was like, "Oh my God! Do you see what you're doing?" And of course, back then it was no big deal.
They were just sneakers.
They were fucking first edition Air Jordans, and he's like tromping around in the mud.
I did not catch that. That's very interesting.
It drove me crazy. So yes, as you said, Harvey Korman comes back to circumvent some of the shenanigans from his unscrupulous brother. Who was the lady that was his sidekick, his woman, his main squeeze? She was terrible.
She was so bad I don't remember.
She was not funny. Meant to be funny and just not so. We were talking about Robert Picardo and Wendy Shaw.
Uh-huh.
They own like an ice cream shop.
Yeah. Because there's at one point there's giant ice cream cones on people's heads.
That's their hats.
Yeah,
I guess. Again, not funny. I don't understand what their angle was. This film felt very California to me.
Yeah.
Like you had to have like in the know, like inside jokes for Californians. I really felt that there was a lot of stuff that went over my head, but I was kind of feeling what they were talking about.
California, no doubt about it.
California. This one is the biggest ripoff of them all. I think that if you haven't seen it, it's on, believe probably like Pluto or Plex, one of those free download services where you can.
You got to watch ads, but
you got to watch the ads, but it's there.
So I wanted to say something about the director, Tina Hirsch.
Yeah, totally.
She had edited 3 films for Corman in the 1970s, and in the mid 80s, told him that she wanted to direct. And Corman wanted to make a Gremlins knockoff. He did it on purpose. He wanted to make a Gremlins knockoff, which were profitable at the time. And since Hirsch had edited that film, it seemed like a good fit. Munchies was shot over 12 days, followed by 3 days of filming puppets and inserts.
It felt like it.
12 days. I think that a lot of the movies that we talked about today are single location shoots.
Yeah, totally. This one, even when they're in Peru, it felt like they were in just, California.
Yeah.
It reminded me of like Land of the Lost. It was just really shitty.
Machu Picchu.
Yeah.
The toxic waste dump of the galaxy.
If you're going to watch any of these knockoffs, I would say definitely watch Critters.
Critters, yeah. Okay, so of the 4 movies that we talked about today, I'm going to rank them.
Go.
Obviously, Gremlins is at the top.
Yes.
Then Critters.
Yep.
Then Munchies.
Yep.
Then Ghoulies.
Totally.
Yeah. I think that's the correct hierarchy. And for once, Rotten Tomatoes got it right, too, because that's
good.
That's the order of ranking for them as well.
This was an education for me because, again, I had always had the impression that Ghoulies and Critters were like such direct knockoffs of Gremlins. Well, I was wrong.
Yeah.
I think that they are their own
in ways
films.
Yes.
Yeah, but they do borrow the elements, and it's easy to sit there and point the finger and say that, well, of course, Gremlins wasn't the first
exactly
film with
like
critters.
we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Gremlins itself stood on the shoulders of things that came before that.
Yeah, everything is derivative, but at the same time, we look at those things that are iconic, the accomplishments of the individual film, and I think that Dante and the guys that were behind Gremlins really did a cool job of taking something like that, of these nameless, voiceless creatures, except for Gizmo. But they were able to take those and turn it into something fun and entertaining that could carry a film, which is a challenge.
Yeah,
as we can see with some of these inferior ones, where in the wrong hands, it just falls flat on his
awry.
Yeah, it falls flat on his face. So yeah, that's it for the
Gremlins knockoffs.
Gremlins knockoffs, man, that was a fun one. I really liked that one. I learned a lot myself and saw some movies that I thought I knew what they were and they weren't. So yeah.
So whose marketing decision was it at AMC, the car company, to create a car called a Gremlin?
Well, that was before any of these films,
but it also still had the connotation of malfunctioning equipment.
Oh, that's the other thing that we should mention. I'm sorry to backtrack, but Munchies features the Munchies driving a Gremlin.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And it's even got a license plate that says...
That's a little on the nose.
Gremlin 1. Yeah. I think that's Corman saying, yes, we are ripping off Gremlins.
Very much so.
He was shameless about that. You seen anything good lately? Or we just
so
been watching these movies?
I watched these 4 movies this week. I did watch one new movie, which was kind of meh. and that is a Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Mansion.
Oh, the Disney thing.
The new Disney Haunted Mansion.
It's got Lakeith in it.
Yeah, it's got Lakeith Stanfield. He's good. He might be overacting just a little bit.
Okay.
Danny DeVito, Owen Wilson, Tiffany Haddish, and if I'm forgetting anybody, I'm sorry. But leaps and bounds better than the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion. But
not saying too
that
much.
bar was set pretty low.
Yeah.
And the special effects are all right. Jared Leto is the voice of like the big bad ghost.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's all modified. It doesn't sound like him. I haven't checked it in yet, but I think it's probably going to get a middling rating from me.
Okay. There's some cool stuff that just came out that we're going to be looking at. I think you and I were both talking about some films.
It's on Amazon Prime, Totally Killer.
Yeah.
Which I want to see because it involves time travel. And
looks
I'm
like a Freaky Friday hot tub time machine is what it looks like to me.
It's also drawn some controversy in its similarity to The Final Girl.
Okay. Yeah. Final Girls.
I'm still going to watch it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I intend to as well. Loki Season 2 kicked off.
Oh, okay.
I saw the first episode of it. There is a very, very smart, cleverly written 3 lines of dialogue.
So I should probably watch Season 1 then, huh?
You should probably watch Season 1, yes. But Ki-Hu Kwan,
nice.
a.k.a. Short Round, a.k.a. Data, is in this, and there are 3 lines of dialogue. It's one of the smartest written pieces of dialogue that it's a joke. It's a nod to Goonies and Temple of Doom. And if you're not paying attention, you won't catch it.
Oh, wow.
It's so smart. It's so beautifully done. It's wordplay.
Well, speaking of Disney and how they own everything, I've been enjoying Ahsoka.
Ahsoka wrapped up.
Yeah, I've seen the first 3 or 4 episodes.
I think that Ahsoka,
there's only 6, right?
I think 8. I think
okay.
Ahsoka is one of the best of the Star Wars TV series, and this, of course, leads into this Dave Filoni film that they're going to produce. And I have to say, I'm excited because they kind of dispensed with some of the stuff that was unnecessary in some of the other TV series, and this one really dialed it into a very cohesive, very fine storyline that kind of says we're aiming at something bigger, and I'm excited to see what the big story is going to be.
So I didn't realize going into it that Mary Elizabeth Winstead is in it.
Yeah,
and it took me a couple episodes to figure out which character.
Yeah,
she
it's your
is.
girl.
Yeah, one of them.
She got the green on.
Yeah. Oh man, did you know what song I heard on the way over here?
What was that?
It was a little track from Billy Ocean called "Caribbean Queen."
Oh, you gave me that on vinyl.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was kind of poignant that it came on the radio on the way over here.
All right, that's going to wrap us up. You're not with us next week,
Nope.
unfortunately. Joey and Todd will be with us. We're going to be talking about Alien
Knockoffs,
the
which there's a
Ridley
lot.
Scott fantastic movie that could have been a shitty movie had some key decisions not been made.
You have to talk about H.R. Giger.
Of course, that'll be a big part of it, but also Ridley Scott's decision to make the lead the female. A strong female lead.
Badass female
and
lead.
how key that was. So we're really excited to talk about that. I think I've got 3 Harvey Korman. I think I've got 3 Roger Corman movies lined up to talk to you about. So we're looking forward to that one. You'll be back, I think, for the final of the month. We're going to talk about Exorcist knockoffs.
Yes, that was my idea, not Todd's.
Oh, is it
just
yours?
for the record, it was my idea.
Credit where credit's due. So yeah, we're excited to be doing this. This is a lot of fun. Hopefully you like it too. And we insist that you please tell your friends about us. Please like, review, subscribe on all of the podcatcher apps, and follow us on social media. We are Cinema Chop Shop on everything except for YouTube. We are Cinema Chop Shop Podcast. And we look forward to producing the next episode, and we hope you'll be there with us. In the meantime, we please ask you to always watch, chop, retrofit, and don't feed them after midnight.
For God's sakes, there's only 3 rules.